Let's go.
Yes, recording has started. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll call to order the Independent Salary Commission on April 25th, 2023. And all members are in attendance except for Yo, I get that right. Anyway, he is excused, he is traveling. And we also have Susie Mansell here to talk to us about money. So, first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Does anybody have any 10 minutes?
No, I'm good with the minutes.
Seeing none, then these are approved. And there's no public comment because they're not here. So then we'll move on to agenda items, starting with the financial overview.
All right, I am gonna share my screen here. I
Set up the same.
don't remember how to do this. I think I can do that. Oh, does that work? Okay, great. All right, as John said, I'm Susie Mansell. I'm the city's budget manager. So I'm here today to give a high-level overview of the city's finances, particularly in the types or in the areas of the budget that are relevant to the city council budget. So the main topics for today is the city's biennial budget, which I'll touch on a little bit, mostly because it was our first biennial budget that we just adopted. We'll be focusing a bit more on the city's general fund, which is where city council is budgeted. And then the current fiscal health of the general fund in particular. So, as I mentioned, the city just adopted its first biennial budget, which covered 2023 and 2024. Prior to this biennial budget, we had only adopted annual budgets. So every year we would build a one-year budget. But now with a biennial budget, we treat it somewhat similarly to an annual budget where we come up with spending plans and revenue forecasts for each of the 2 years of the budget. We'll just adopt 2 years at once. For the second year, there are usually some inflationary cost anticipated factors built in that we of course monitor over the course of the year to make sure that we're still in line with that. So this budget also includes about $10.9 million of spending of the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, or ARPA, and for 2023 and 2024. That primarily funds capital projects. Those aren't really in the general fund so much, but we wanted to call it out mostly because that is a big one-time number. Other budget items that were highlights from this last biennial budget is that we added 18.5 FTEs or full-time equivalent positions over 2022. And primarily those new positions were focused on public safety, so police and public works. And a lot of those as well were restoring positions that we had to reduce down during the pandemic. So bringing back up to a full complement. And then within the police department budget, we also added a program to fund police body cameras, as well as 5 new patrol cars. And then the city established the first emergency housing program, currently a pilot for 2023 and 2024, as well as 2 behavioral health specialists that will help support that effort. And those are funded by way of a 0.1% affordable housing sales tax that was approved by City Council in 2020. So the current sales tax rate in Issaquah is 10.1%. That 0.1% is dedicated to affordable housing. Other highlights, the city adjusted personnel budgets over 2022 to account for inflationary increases. We use a cost of living adjustment based on the consumer price index. And that number was very high in mid 2022. Then council also reauthorized some spending from 2022 after this current budget was adopted. primarily for reauthorizations are typically items that were budgeted in the prior year that for a number of reasons we weren't able to spend by the end of that year. So it just reappropriates that budget into the next year. Then the revenues did increase in 2022 and are forecasted to somewhat increase a bit more in 2023 over what we were seeing pre-pandemic. And that was primarily, we saw a lot of growth in things like utility tax, tax charged on utility rates, as well as sales tax. We saw quite a few increases there, as well as property tax, because property values are very high right now. So these revenue increases have really left the city on a pretty solid foundation going into 2023 and 2024, primarily in the general fund.
Were those the three primary contributors then for the growth of revenue?
Those were the other major. So in the general fund there, we call the big four revenues. So those three, and then the fourth is business and occupation tax. Yeah. And that also increased a bit as well, coming back from the pandemic.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Then ongoing inflation is being monitored. I mean, we've certainly all been reading about it, hearing about it.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen major impacts yet, particularly in the general fund. But we tend to see things on a couple month delay from the rest of the country, that as people start to feel inflation, they might spend a little bit less on sales, and that'll translate to sales tax. The one place where we have seen a slowdown already is in the real estate market, which isn't too surprising. And in particular, we've now seen a few months of reductions over prior years for the same periods. And we do get a tax on real estate sales, both commercial and residentials. And that is primarily used to fund street programs and capital projects. So that doesn't necessarily impact the city council budget or the general fund too much, but it's the main area that we're keeping an eye on, for sure.
Susie, what do you mean by street programs? Is that just filling potholes, or is it more than that?
It's more than that. So our street division, we have two street divisions, one for engineering that helps design some of the larger capital projects and street improvement projects, and then street maintenance that will do things like the potholes, but also patch and repair along the way. Yeah. So this is a high-level overview of 2023 of the budget. So the total adopted budget for 2023 specifically was about $168 million for all funds. The general fund was 73 million and accounted for about 43% of the city's total budget. So this shows the larger buckets that we break the city's budget into. So the general fund is always the biggest thing we talk about. It's our most general use, the most allowable funding. Special revenue funds are usually restricted to a particular purpose. Like we might bring in a revenue like the gas tax, for example, the motor vehicle fuel tax. I am from Michigan, we call it a gas tax there, but the motor vehicle fuel tax here that is restricted to use on street infrastructure and things like that. So we use those funds, the special revenue funds, to make sure that we are putting that funding where it needs to go. Debt service is fairly self-explanatory, funds where we just make sure that we can account for and pay for the city's ongoing debt obligations, which compared to other cities, ours is very low. We have a very low debt obligation right now.
Which is?
It's about 2.6 million a year. And some of that though comes from, some of that is directly from property tax. So the city adopted a property tax levy. I don't remember when, sometime in the last 10 years. And that funding is dedicated, there's an extra portion on a property tax bill that's dedicated to certain purposes. There is a page, it's not in the 23 budget, but in the 22 budget book on the city's website, we break down the city's debt obligations as of 2022, where that funding comes from and what projects it's spent on. But it's about 2.6 million a year. Yeah. And then the capital project fund is about 22 million. That fund is primarily big facility projects, transportation projects, parks, capital projects. And as well as, there's one more in there I'm not remembering. So some smaller things as well, but those are the main capital projects that are in there. And then the utility funds is the city's water, sewer, and stormwater utilities. Those each have their own funds because the revenue that's collected from rate revenue gets put directly back into those same utilities. So that accounts for about 22% of the overall budget. And then finally, internal service funds are things like our fleet fund, where we collect the funding for that fund comes from other city departments to fund its own activity. So that's also where the IT fund lives, as well as insurance, city's liability insurance, as well as we used to be self-insured for health insurance. So that was also there. So those are the buckets that we typically use and how they make up the overall budget specifically for 2023. 2024 is pretty similar.
What's the budget year?
This one is specifically it's a annual year. So it follows the same calendar. So 2024 looks pretty similar. General fund comes down a little bit from the prior year, from 2023, mainly because a lot of that ARPA funding that I mentioned earlier is in 2023. So that comes down a bit in 2024. But otherwise, the spread generally is pretty similar. If we focus in specifically on the general fund, to give you an idea of what is budgeted within there, we have a total 2023 budget of about 73 million. Most of that is going to be in that green parks, community services, the police department. We contract for fire with Eastside Fire and Rescue, so that's a fairly large piece as well. Interfund transfers is a little inside baseball league, but that is really where we transfer money to other city funds. So that number is big because we collect the ARPA funds into the general fund, so we have to move it over to where we'll actually spend it. So it's a little deceptive. And then, so the city council budget is within the executive department. It's at least that's where we budget it. And that's primarily so that it's the executive staff that coordinate what that budget looks like, coordinate it with city council, and then they help process their financial transactions over the course of the year. So that's just where we budget it. So the executive department makes up, 4.8 million out of the 72.8 million. And within that 4.9 million, about 282,000 is city council. So city council makes up about 0.4% of the overall general fund. So to give you an idea, we printed out what the adopted 23-24 budget is for city council. So as you'll see from this, the vast majority of the still relatively very small budget is either that salary and wages piece or the cost of IT. So we cost allocate our information technology costs, meaning that the total cost to maintain the city's information technology equipment and services is spread out across the entire city. So that number only changes depending on the IT budget and on the number of city council members that we have, which is not going to change. So that will show you for 23-24 what that looks like. And then in addition, my last slide was the
I'm sorry, the quick part. The insurance, is that liability or?
Correct.
Insurance?
Yeah. It's also split in the same way as IT. So that'll be general insurance, liability insurance. It'll be, I think there's some, there are a number of smaller ones in there, but liability is by far the biggest piece in there.
Yeah, and as we're looking at the budget, the proposed budget, we staff stay out of the IT allocation and the insurance
Mhm.
funds.
Yeah,
So
Those
this
are-
is only city council
correct,
members.
correct.
And it's not going to them, it's going to, the management.
Correct,
Yes.
yeah.
So it's
So,
everything, servers, network, hardware, it's handed out.
So we're spending $107,000 maintaining IT for city council?
mhm,
It's just their portion of the whole budget. So it's like a peanut butter spread by per capita sort of. Because the cost of trying to go, well, I've only got one phone, so I should only be charged X to my department. The cost of maintaining that is extremely high, takes labor to do that kind of inventory. So we gotta just
Do it on FTE.
do it based on head count and just spread it evenly, with a few exceptions, like if the department buys something specifically for their use, like color courts might.
Right,
Then they'll have to pay.
No, no,
for
yeah, it
it,
makes
right?
sense.
Yeah.
It's just the overhead, that's how it.
but when you slice the pie, this is the slice
Correct.
that gets under the umbrella of the city council.
exactly.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
insurance is not, as Susie said, it's not healthcare insurance, it's insurance, like
Yeah.
the risk management.
Yeah.
pool, that's
Right.
Yeah, so, and those two items will be independent of what a salary might be. They are entirely based on head count within the city council.
Do
So
the city council people, sorry if this is a dumb question, but do they have offices?
they do not.
Okay. So they don't reside in any city facilities, but it costs $110,000 to support 7 people that don't even live on the. John, you're former IT, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not the cost per, not the actual individual cost. It's
Yeah.
like the city's, like, that is 4 million.
I think it's like 5 or 6 now.
And
Yeah.
you just go by how many seats are there, that's it. So
So,
it's an average, right? Because the cost of trying to allocate
Yeah.
one phone or one laptop for
Yeah.
this individual.
Well, the phone is up here in-
For that individual party.
the cell phone allowance is up here.
That one is
So this
the
must be
use
their
of their
IP.
phones. Yeah, so it's also, so because it's not just the infrastructure itself, so it's not just the phone or the laptop itself, it's also the portion of staff time to support all of that replacement.
Server
Exactly.
space, this. the
Cybersecurity.
software
So it
programs.
costs, it costs $5-6 million a year to cover IT for the city of Issaquah, which is 270 some odd headcount.
Mhm.
If you divide that by, the amount of people multiplied by 7 council members, that's the number for the
More or
year.
less. I mean, the
Yeah.
police.
Exactly.
Police apply a bunch of esoteric IT stuff, it's just police. So that stays in their fund and doesn't affect the average.
Because that's a specialty thing,
You know,
yeah.
plenty of head count and other things, servers.
Right.
Data center, all that stuff. right?
John helped me build a model that we use
Right,
to
yeah.
this day.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah,
A few dollars of this paid for that little thing, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, my last slide is very similar to the one we just had, but it's 24 instead of 2023. So we saw the total budget come down again, part of, mainly because of that ARPA spending that was primarily in 2023. So, yeah, that's the city's budget overview. Oh, I guess I had a few more. I thought I was done. So, this slide shows, as part of the budget process, we forecast out more than just the adopted budget period or the proposed budget period. So we try and go out for 5 years to anticipate, depending on where revenues might come in over that time, and then expenditure growth that's usually based on certain growth factors for cost of living, for inflationary increases, where that would put us in terms of ending fund balance. So this shows by the end of 2027, the city would end with about 23.6 million, if all things hold true, which is always a giant question mark over 5 years, especially in today's financial times. That we'd end 2027 with a general fund balance of about 24 million, total fund, or sorry, that's beginning, ending of about 23 million. Well, I guess it's still 23 million. So you'll see there is a note for designated fund balance versus undesignated fund balance. That is because we do have some restricted funds Within the general fund, primarily that affordable housing sales tax that we try to keep designated to affordable housing, or not try to, we do keep it designated to affordable housing. So that makes up that designated fund balance line. So the total undesignated would be about 6.6 million at the end of 2027.
Which is money in the bank?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So the city does have an adopted fund balance policy that we aim, there's a target of ending the year at 15%. So that the undesignated fund balance would be 15% or more of the total budgeted expenditures for that year. So for 2027, this would show that we would have an undesignated fund balance of about 10% of budgeted expenditures, which is lower than we'd like it to be. But that's also why we perform this exercise for looking 5 years out, so that there's time to identify new revenue sources or adjust expenditures before we get to that point. So that's just where we'll be, assuming all of our assumptions hold, which is, 5 years out.
Now,
A bit of a question.
yeah, so yesterday I went to the meeting of the whole, the council of the whole,
Mhm.
and heard about the great ideas they're having for City Hall and whatnot.
Mhm.
I think the number they were throwing around was about $27 million for the court and police. New building construction.
No. That's what they're doing all the new.
So when you're doing this forecasting, are those considerations as well? That just doesn't pan out until city council approves
That's
something?
correct, yeah.
Okay.
For something that big, we will wait until council has given us that direction. So I understand that I did not watch last night, I was at a park board meeting, but I watched part of it this morning, and my understanding is they gave some general direction on where the overall direction they want to go with it and some of the path that they want to go. But we still need to talk to them about how we pay for it, which
Yeah.
I believe is going to city council on May 8th.
Mhm.
So we'll have a larger conversation with them about that. And then that will likely, hopefully that discussion will also help indicate when those will need to happen. So there are a number of different funding
Right.
mechanisms we can look at for doing that, but yeah, that's not anticipated in here.
Got it. Now, being in a biennial budget, do you review? So right now you're doing 23, 24.
Mhm.
In 24, do you do 24, 25, or you wait till 25 to do 25, 26?
Great question. So we will do, later this year, we'll do, what is required by state law under a biennial budget, which is called a mid-biennium update, where we will take a deep dive into 2024 again to make sure that what we anticipated in 24 when we were building the budget in the summer of 2022 still holds. We'll also look at where we're likely to end 2023, that if there are underspends there that we anticipate, we can put that back in for 2024 and look at these ending fund balances again. But especially this year, that forecast that we'll do this summer or early fall is going to be really important for our revenues, since things have been so volatile lately due to inflation and, the general economy as it is today.
Right.
So then next summer, we will build the 25-26 biennial budget.
And what you do in between would be budget amendments or adjustments.
Yes, correct. So we always have the option along the way after the biennial budget is adopted to do budget amendments that we propose to city council, much like little tiny budgets, and show what it's for, and then how much it'll cost, which fund it's going toward. And then city council will approve it or not approve it as they would the budget itself.
And then there's some expenses that come along the way that may not have been budgeted, but still fit within the overall funding of the
Yeah,
budget.
yeah,
So it may be something new or council increase in salaries or whatever it is that doesn't necessarily warrant a budget amendment because the funds are still available.
yeah.
Right, so, final question, I
Mhm.
swear. Let's say the the final decision of this, committee or this commission, sorry, is to, pay $1 million per person in the council, right? And we raise it by $7 million. Right? And we say this is effective July 1st, right? It definitely blows this out of the water.
Yeah.
Not something we'll do, but
Sure.
so you go into one of those mini budgets and ask, but does the council also have to approve that? Because according to the like our decision is binding, right?
It is, but it is subject to referendum, so I would imagine someone in the community would say, no.
I'll be
thank
the
you."
first one, yeah. I don't want to give $7 million for sure, but,
Or they'd say, I'm
Exactly.
gone.
yeah. Barring crazy numbers like that.
We have a lot of people running.
So it just goes into effect, but how does that get then somehow put, because it's gonna skew these numbers
Sure.
one way or the other, right? Because right now it's 108,600.
If it was a
that
million
large,
burgers,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, no, of course.
Yeah.
But if it could very easily be within a range that doesn't require a budget amendment.
Yeah.
And so,
What is that range?
It is not a specific number necessarily, but when we see what the findings are of this commission, we'll evaluate that based on what we believe we can reasonably absorb within
Mhm.
existing budget. So for example, if we have positions that have been vacant for a few months, that we've just struggled to fill the position, or we had someone leave and we're trying to fill it, those savings from the empty position, we can often utilize for to absorb things like this.
Now, being fiscally conservative and a citizen of this Issaquah, would be possible to see, to get that number ahead of like time? No, just to know.
Victor, which, I didn't follow that, which number are you asking?
What is possible to get without, going into,
I wouldn't pose it that way. Because two things, one is there's so many unknowns with what we can absorb. And then the other question is if we did want to reallocate or do it through a budget amendment, it's really a housekeeping matter for council. They're not they don't have the authority to decline it. They
Right.
could personally decline it, but they couldn't reject that budget
right?
amendment.
No, I understand,
Yeah.
but I was just thinking of more data, but
It's a bit
'cause-
of a moving target is the problem.
I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to anticipate what that is, because we'll also have additional items outside of, this commission that may have increases along the way as well. So it's always kind of going up and down a
it's
little
a
bit.
moving target, yeah, I get it, all right.
And maybe later on in the process, as we're circling around some numbers.
Yeah.
We can have Susie come back and
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Run it by
Give us some
Suzie, yeah.
The
Mhm.
sniff test,
if we think we need at that point.
yeah,
Yeah.
if we can absorb, or we would need an amendment, yeah.
But also
Absolutely.
consider that this council group is like a rounding error compared to the rest of the city.
Oh, of course, yeah,
So even if you double it, it's not gonna really push the big numbers hardly at all.
yeah, I mean, doubling it goes to like,
And I've seen political climate where we're stressed because of the recession or something. No, no way, right? But city's been on a roll for 106 years.
We're doing well.
And making healthy decisions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Certainly during the pandemic, the city made very quick, very responsible choices going early in the pandemic. That's left us in a good position right now. When a lot of cities have had to look at cuts in 2023 and 2024, we've been able to maintain and even bring back some of what we had to cut during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's pretty steep cuts. What was it?
Yeah, I think we cut about 20 positions, 25
Yeah.
positions.
So 10%,
Yeah.
rough thereabout.
yeah,
Yeah,
So that was, a lot of cities are like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh,
yeah,
well, that's a good idea.
And the point, the effective piece for that was deciding as the funds became healthy, where do you invest what services? And so we were putting dollars towards things like human services and different components that we didn't have before.
all right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Don't remember if I have it. Okay, I guess I do have one more. So next steps, any further questions, which we've already started, but I'm happy, of course, to take more. And then, I am happy to, if there's anything that I can't answer today, I'm happy to, if I just don't have it at my fingertips, I'm happy to, follow up afterwards. I think I might, we're at the end.
I'll drop this in the, repository for us, so that you have it, and not have to worry about your paper copy.
I have a question on in the packet, there's the general fund department expenditure summary.
Mhm.
And Public Works said that it's budget entirely outside of it, but I didn't
Yes.
see it anywhere else.
Yes, so for the snippet that's in the packet, that is mainly focused on the general fund overview. So further into the budget book, we do, show the other funds that make up Public Works. Yeah, there's a section dedicated to the Public Works Department.
Yeah, I extracted, I think, just the first 20 pages for it.
Yeah.
I can send the whole link.
Yeah.
I mean, it's public, I can find it, it's fine. Thank you.
Mhm.
The other, this is sort of a heads up. So one of the questions we're gonna discuss next in our survey is about council members applying for reimbursement for expenses. At least for me, depending on what those answers are, we may want some actuals about what they have gotten reimbursement, not what they got reimbursement for, but the
With the
dollars.
amounts, sure.
Yeah, but at least right now, the numbers seem so small that don't waste your time on it.
No
On
worries.
the cell phone allowance, it looks about $50 a person.
Well, that's false, so
Oh.
that's, they're handed a cell phone, so we're not doing a cell phone.
Oh,
reimbursement.
you're maintaining their cell phone.
Oh,
That's
Very
what it
equipment.
is. So you used to pay your cell phone bill, but because of security issues, they're
Apparently
just
that
like,
should never fit in the budget.
city of.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
good example of, for how big the budget is, sometimes things still sneak
Well,
in.
You don't pay a lot of attention.
But-
to it.
Yeah,
$2,000.
For a little $2,500, yeah, for sure.
It's a good question. I could
Yeah.
look into the travel item because it's only, what is that? Well, we don't have actual here,
No, this is just.
Yeah, this is just fine.
but it's probably, if we did any reimbursements, it was less than $100 total.
Yeah, and I'm not saying don't do it now.
If,
I'm just saying, depending on what the responses
Sure,
are,
yeah.
it may spark a question about.
we
that.
do, yeah, we've got department credit cards or P cards, and we tend to register them for the conferences and book their
Okay,
flights,
take
so
them, so
they're,
we pay for that, yeah.
or they carpool and they're not seeking reimbursement.
Even less of a reason to do it now.
Yeah, so many remote options for things now too. Great.
So is that line for cell phone allowances, the IP access for their home phones?
That is a carryover from prior budgets that it sounds like shouldn't be in there anymore,
Oh,
but yeah.
well, don't you reimburse them for their internet at home?
We do, it's a $600 reimbursement. I think there's 3 members that, take part of that,
Oh,
benefit.
Because they also have the
Yeah, we
option,
have communication.
That's the one.
they also have the option of having a cell chip in the laptop we gave you. And so then,
you give them a laptop too.
oh yeah, a tablet, it's like one of these little circuits.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that'll work anyway, right? So they don't have to pay for internet.
Oh, I see.
Or not only take it, right?
Yeah.
Or they don't have coverage for house.
Right. Oh, okay.
Because I wrote that in under benefits other, because that's what I thought it was, but, benefits other, so the object column is, helps us describe what the activity is, and then the description is the line item. But, for example, when, an employee gets their salary, there is an amount that hits their salary and wages line. There's an amount that hits employer taxes, and then there's an amount that hits employee or benefits other, and the benefits other is kind of a catch-all. There's a lot of little things that fall into that, but much fewer for city council as there are fewer benefits that.
So if they were taxed on something, that's a benefit, would that show up?
That's
as other?
correct. That would be other.
Okay,
Yeah.
then I'm pretty
Oh,
confident.
that
with
would be,
that.
that's, yeah, there's employee taxes.
Yeah.
All right. So that those dollars might be spending, just not on cell phone.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, I wrote in cell phone allowance because I was like, benefits other is too vague. Let's put something in to describe it.
Of course.
Yeah.
What Wi-Fi are you guys using in here?
It's a, ISSA,
Just the ISSA?
Yeah.
It's an open.
It's
that's the only one that doesn't have a password.
Yeah.
Is that a fact?
All right, any other budget questions?
So the Ouija board says the future is,
Right now, it's good. It's stable. We are,
Right,
yes.
cover shades.
That we can, it implies that we can at least support, the current suite of services that the city is providing. If we do look at bigger, activities, programs, if we do, pursue something with the city hall, depending on what that funding mechanism is, that would be above and beyond, but that's also why we need to talk to them about new funding sources above and beyond what we currently have built into the budget.
there's like multiple ways. One way is they can issue a voter bond. So then it goes out for vote at an election.
Oh,
And
that motion.
increase the property tax typically. or increase
Oh.
sales tax, but
It's
it goes
usually,
out
yeah,
there.
it's usually property
And so
tax.
those, it used to pass back in the day. I don't think they do anymore. And then there's what they call councilmatic, which is they can just decide, we're gonna issue a bond and just pay it out of the general fund.
Mhm.
And so that's where then, because the first option, other than buying the bond, if it gets approved, Susie doesn't really have a game in there, but in the second option, councilmatic, well, that affects general fund. Well, okay, we have to talk.
Yeah.
And then there's outside money, federal money, kind of stuff. Sometimes it's a combination.
Yeah.
Right, accommodation, where we're setting aside money over 3 years to help fund
Mhm.
that.
Absolutely.
And the legislative proposal to raise the 1% cap did not go through, did I read that right?
Well, we proposed one back in 2019, for a transportation benefit district sales tax. That did not go through, or council did not approve, that path at the
Well,
time.
I'm sorry, I meant on the state.
You're talking state.
There was something this year. in the
Oh,
state
for
legislature.
property tax,
Yeah.
yeah, they had they were contemplating allowing cities to increase property tax by more than 1%.
Yeah.
That did not pass, unfortunately, because that's one of the biggest limiting factors with our revenues is property values and property tax increase. We're very limited in what we can increase it by. So even if property values increase by 25%, which is not out of the realm of possibility in Issaquah these days, the amount that the city receives is only 1% more than what we received in the prior year.
The
It's-
gross revenue. Yeah, so it's not much.
Yeah, so, yeah, but of
It's
course,
not
services
inflation.
grow.
So right now, they doubled the assessed value of my home and land. And Issaquah doesn't see double my taxes?
Correct.
King County gives that.
It's spread across a number of sources. So the way property tax is calculated in the state is very convoluted. But it is based on both the value of the property and the share of the overall mix of who gets the property tax. So a lot of it goes to the county, a lot of it goes to school districts of various levels. So a lot to the Issaquah School District, there's some to a state school fund. And then there's also a state share of property tax. So as of 2021 or 2022, I can't remember which year this was for, of the total property tax bill to the average Issaquah household, only about 9 cents on the dollar came to the city of Issaquah. The rest of it elsewhere.
But the 1% applies to more than just the city, right?
Yes, so every element of every body that charges that property tax can increase theirs by 1%, so that definitely flushes out to the average household. And I will say that my view on property tax is skewed in that I mainly look at it from the perspective of what the city would receive. But to a homeowner, yeah, every piece of that could increase it by 1%. So, yeah, and that's another element that speaks to increases in property tax for the homeowner.
And King County has a great, one thing they do really well, they have a great distribution, so you can look up per parcel even and say, where's all the money going, what's the dollar amount, what's the percent? It's everything from some
Yeah.
state school stuff all the way down to Port of Seattle, Sound Transit, Fire,
That
Hospital.
parcel viewer is neat. I spent some time in there preparing for yesterday's meeting.
So much fun
Yeah,
on
and I
that
think
site.
your property tax bill, correct me if I'm wrong, comes with the breakdown on it, the one from the county.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
fiscal school.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Property tax.
So Susie, what do you think is the toughest budgetary decision the council's gonna have to make in the next year?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say what we end up doing with facilities is probably one of the biggest that we're looking at. So right now, so we alternate every other year now that we're in a biennial budget process. In odd year or in even years, we'll build the budget for the next 2 years. In the odd years, we will build the capital improvement plan that looks at 6 years, the next 6 years of capital investments, which are massive, big projects that are covering the city's utilities, transportation, parks, facilities, and IT. So there are some pretty big elements in there of longer term impacts and funding mechanisms. The city conducted a, what was it called? It was the Capital Financial Planning Task Force, something along those lines, that worked primarily the end of 2021 and into 2022, looking at the larger needs in capital investment throughout the city and trying to help prioritize what is the higher priority, whether it's transportation or it's parks or it's facilities. Not to say that any of them aren't important, but where it kind of falls within a larger hierarchy to then plan out other potential funding mechanisms that we can look at to fund that. And that task force determined, then the task force was made up of members of the community from each of the city's boards and commissions, as well as a few council members. And they spoke to the highest priority being mobility and transportation. That the city also conducts a community survey every other year, and it consistently says that traffic congestion and mobility is a major issue. So we are in the process now, in the heat of it, of producing the proposed capital improvement plan, which will go to city council on Monday, which is very soon. But that, as part of that, they'll be contemplating some of these larger funding mechanisms, especially for things like facilities. You know, we're looking at needing to build a new fire station, things like that. So those are, I think, going to be pretty meaty in terms of budget this year, for sure.
So the city owns the fire station, but we contract out the Issaquah
Correct.
Fire Rescue Services.
Yeah. Exactly. So we, within the city limits, we own the buildings, the infrastructure itself. So I think, and my understanding is that that's done mostly so they know who to charge for what, but also that if a city decides to stop contracting, that it's easy enough to kind of pull their pieces back. But I mean, we haven't talked about that by any stretch, but
Well, and it's a little bit bigger than a contract. It's an interlocal and we're gonna sit on the board of, you know, we've got some voting seats and so we own these assets and also pay for them.
Yeah.
of course, yeah. Right, any other questions?
Other questions?
Yeah.
Let's see, we also have a similar relationship with Cascade Water Lines. Well, that's funded from the utility fund.
Yeah. From the water fund primarily.
So they own assets that we're joint owners of, because we're on that same board, one of the council members, a voting member. And that gets water from the Seattle water system that gets purchased, but they also own other infrastructure that connected to Coleman's water and Everett, because when they close the mills, their supply went way out, because the mill uses as much as a big city. And Seattle was hijacking the east side. It was the only provider at the time. And we had wells here, but we were running them at the end of their custody. So Cascade Water Lines was formed as a defensive mechanism from extortion by Seattle. And they didn't really stop extorting until Tacoma came online. And they're like, oh, well, actually, we could sell it for 25% of what we were charging. Because there's plenty of water, it's just a matter of supply, right? So, in this region.
Yeah.
Right. I will probably excuse myself then for the rest of
Thanks,
your
Suzie.
meeting. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Did you want the debt obligation page from the 2022 budget emailed out to you?
These?
No, there was a debt obligation reference early. I'll look at it. If it's easy and helpful, I'll send it.
Yes, please.
And then you guys can decide if you want to look at it or not.
Oh, debt obligation, yes, that,
Okay.
I'd love to see that, yes, please. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the 2% that was 2.6 million, that becomes 2.7 in 2024.
Mhm.
I'm listening over here.
You got that one on your list? Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah, and the other, like,
And then the
memory
actuals.
serves me right,
Yeah.
over the last decade, we've just been retiring a bunch of council manager bonds and stuff. There's a bunch of that activity back in the 80s or 90s. And they just all been finally
Yeah.
getting paid off.
Mm.
We're kind of down at the end of that cycle.
Yeah, we have a lot of debt that's getting close to retiring, primarily voted debt. So on there's a portion of a property tax bill that could get smaller for the city, in the next, if we don't go out to the voters again for more. But, yeah, so there's some that's set to retire in the next 4 or 5 years, in that regard. And that'll be on the page that we'll send out too.
We voted for something today.
County.
That's,
County.
Oh, that was kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
So the
They have a
history of voter bonds for the city itself was pretty standard until they built this city hall. So when they built this one, way over budget, and they had quality issues, and the public perception was, you guys, no way. So there was like 10 years where if you even mentioned bond, you just get shot. So the councils were really, no, I'm not doing that.
Inside.
Yes, the history. I've only worked
But
for the city for
city's
4 years
changed a
down
lot,
those
and it's
far.
growing. There's like 5,000 people in the city when that happened.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, Susie, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I said raise the question, so if the Issaquah city debt is retired,
Mhm.
does that really mean lower property taxes, or does that money just go to King County or one of the other pieces of the pie?
That is a great question. So it will be, if it's city specific, then that will translate to lower property tax. So for example, if this county levy doesn't pass, my understanding is this county levy theoretically, well, I'll do an easier example. So if the city were to propose a new property tax levy and it passes, that would be a new amount on top of the bills, specifically for Issaquah. And it would be specific to within Issaquah city limits. But if that debt retires, we don't go out for additional, the portion of that goes to Issaquah, that, the total portion would come down along with the amount that comes to Issaquah. That one would be tied to each other.
Just, it's not just shifted to someone else.
Correct.
Okay, I like that answer, thank you.
Yeah, I had a feeling. That's a good one. All right, and if you have any additional questions that come up as you're deliberating and talking, who's around?
Yeah, we'll share
Thank
your
you.
contact information with our Commissioner Gioco, and let him watch today's episode.
Right. All right. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Susie.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Suzie.
Thanks.
Okay, next thing on the agenda is to go through the questions and any ideas, future.
Yes.
Yes, it worked like magic. Oh, we have some comments on it too, that's excellent.
So.
Were you able to
And
compile?
I did not merge,
Oh,
but another set of comments from.
Okay. I can turn the comments on. This is the one you sent today, that's all.
I think it came directly from Henry over the weekend.
Yeah, I sent one to Tina and John.
It was pretty, short and.
We're gonna do Henry's, first. Cause I know I had a bunch.
All right, let's see. Oops. Okay, good times. Thanks. Okay, so
I read through them, there are an awful lot of questions.
there's some self-evident, so we'll look at the edits or suggestions, so. You know, besides what prompted you to run, if you run for additional term, have your reasons changed? It's a good question.
Mhm.
I had something similar like that. It was like, does the salary benefits package affect consideration we have about running for reelection?
Yeah. For this influence.
I guess when they decide to run, well, again, the conjecture, but they're free to look up the, salary and benefits before running, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's public information.
I mean, this is specific to, our current council, so this
Right.
is,
Yeah.
specific to council. I can tell you that, you know, that being eligible for election is 18 or older, you have to be, registered, you have to be a US citizen, and you have to pay within the city limits for at least a year of the election, and you have to pay the filing fee, which is 10% of the salary, or submit a financial.
Oh, the
distress.
salary,
Mhm.
mhm.
So, since we're talking,
10% annual salary?
Yeah, it's gone up.
yeah,
It's pretty cheap in my day.
but there's a
I
way
gotta
to,
commit.
ask for relief from the county, there's a separate form for that.
Well, that's a source of revenue. We set it to $1 million and then
Yeah,
that's $100,000, right? For,
Okay, so these are all the same questions I think I've read.
mhm.
Is there any other new ones here to add? Has the compensation for council members ever influenced your decision whether to run for council office?
So what I was trying to do with that one is if they, let's say, 5 years ago, they were thinking about it and chose not to run, and then 2 years ago they ran, whether, trying to get at whether the compensation affected either of those decisions.
I don't know, and something may be hard to get a straight answer to.
Yeah.
Is that a repetitive one from the one above though? And we opened the survey with a question on is salary a consideration for you to seek reelection? And then here we're asking, is compensation influencing your decision to run?
No, I
Does it
think
sound
the
repetitive?
first set of questions was what prompted you to run in general. It didn't address salary.
The follow-up though, that was added, that you added was about,
No.
Wasn't it?
It was not about salary.
Just general reasons.
oh, how would recent change? Got it. Sorry, my bad. You're right.
And this
Carry
one
on.
is the benefits actually.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's just more like what I was asking.
It's just making 18 a little more broad, that's all.
As a compensation, yeah.
Number 20 is interesting. That's a good question to ask.
Yes.
Can't we have access to? Can I read?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Whether you have insurance or not, that might be kind of private, but
well,
do you have access to?
could be self-insured, I mean, you don't need it. Okay.
One question?
And that's why I put option in there, just because if someone doesn't really want to answer that, that's fine.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. So it could leave, you could leave it the same then. Because it's optional.
Well, but I like access, let's use that.
Mhm.
So when you read that first question, has or whatever number, no, just the word is, has the compensation for council ever influenced your decision whether to run? Well, it probably has influence. I mean, they're aware of the salary. Will somebody take that literally, say, that was my only decision for running or not running?
You can't live on it in this.
And so
town.
they will say no, but
I think it's, if they're on the fence, it might tip somebody
okay.
who isn't. Most people are, it seems like, are just highly motivated to be involved in the community.
Yeah. I mean, one question that,
Public servant.
Yeah, they've been doing it for a while before they ended up on council or just do a natural extension.
Oh, okay.
yeah. One question that we haven't, that I didn't see, I don't know if anybody's commented on it, I know that I didn't, is in the time commitment section, have we asked them first, did you know of the time that you were need to be committed to this position when you decided to run? And second, were your expectations more or less to what you're spending on this position now? Right? Because if they thought like, oh yeah, no, this is like,
This is more work than.
exactly, this is probably gonna be a couple hours a week, and then I'm gonna make, extra whatever a year. And it ended up being, as you said, 20 hours a week.
Or was the time commitment, the actual time commitment?
And then more hours for, council president, deputy.
They can be 20 hours a week, certainly for the officers,
Right.
especially around budget season.
I was just putting, I think it was,
It's the bare minimum is 20 hours a month, just to go to the committees. and-
20 hours. That's 7 days a week though, right?
This is a month.
20 hours a month.
20 hours a month is
So
the bare minimum.
Is you gotta go to council meetings,
Well, that
like
sounds a lot
2 of
better.
those a week, probably got 2 committee meetings a week. So that's
Well, the meeting just last night was like,
like 8 hours there, then
Half a night.
you've got an outside
Monthly
obligation,
meeting.
at least one. And that can be 2 to 3 hours, depending what's happening,
and then you have prep and
once
post.
a month, so the roving council member has to go to the Wednesday morning business meeting. So
Yeah.
they changed that?
Yeah, just leadership now.
Just leadership? Okay,
Oh.
that's new.
File it on.
Yeah,
so there is, again, a considerable amount of time spent.
and then if you take the job seriously, you're gonna go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, you're gonna
Right,
go around and you're gonna show up for all the major sort of social events in the
Yeah.
city.
And
You
if
know,
you're chairing
all
a
that stuff.
committee, you may wanna, or you will be connecting the staff to,
Right.
be comfortable with. the
Exactly.
agenda, the flow. and-
Which plays into the change that I'm proposing for those questions, which we'll go over. But, yeah, considering this specific, like their expectations before and after running and,
Time commitment.
their thoughts on the reality afterwards, be good to get.
Is the actual time commitment.
Cause if somebody says like, oh no, I expected it to be about this. And also say, I didn't consider compensation on it, okay, then
Expected.
again. You can say, oh man, I'm like spending too much time for the money or whatever, we'll figure it out. Just data.
Something like that.
Yes.
All right, let's see, back to, hang on. Yeah, it's just a kind of word.
Mhm.
For clarity.
Would being required to pay some share of the premium affect your interest? That's a good question.
Well, I still like the idea that we tossed around and who's the girl that was on? Lauren, she was gonna check on if the insurance would allow that. If it was a single person coverage, would it be something that we can offer that at no charge, but as soon as they want to add family or pay or buy up to higher premium plans, then that would be on them, but the city will cover their basic, low cost if they don't have insurance.
I think there was a second part, which is if insurance were to be offered to council, a majority needed to participate. And then my question would be, is that out of cycle to add? Talking
Yeah.
that they can be included in
Okay.
January without an issue. So she's
Oh,
assembling
okay.
information. She's got your
Yeah,
questions.
okay.
She'll be back in a week or 2 weeks to.
Yeah, because that question was, we were offering the same offer that a city employee gets versus
Right.
how many people would we need if we really were just offering a single person, just the council person themselves.
She can at least tell us what the value is of
Yeah,
X.
and then they can add, AF for if they want
Well,
people and
which,
spouse.
sorry,
No,
what she told us was there's a high deductible plan where the employee doesn't have to pay the premium, and a low deductible plan where they do.
Mhm.
Part of the reason I'm suggesting that question is I've seen so many employers who would offer a no premium share to employees, but
Yeah.
over time that changes. For financial reasons,
no,
because the insurance companies require it,
yeah,
for whatever reason. So I wouldn't want to get stuck in a position
Mhm.
where,
that's a good point.
the city makes a change for all.
Yeah, the city makes a
But the
change.
city makes a change for all. its
Forget that
employees,
we've got 7 of these people.
it Makes the
hanging out.
council by surprise.
That's
My
good.
benefits look different than 20 years
So
ago,
they were 20 years ago, right?
even
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Right. And we may not make any decision on that.
No, that's something to consider.
Yeah.
All right, this is interesting.
Yeah, so,
Check off, what hour bracket does these meetings typically last? So it can be more granular than just one big
So
bucket, right?
I can tell you, meeting time, I've done the homework. So I can tell you, no matter if you're looking at council meetings, special meetings, committee meetings, if you took all their meetings and divided them by the number of meetings, they round out to be about 2 hours. It's about 15 hours a month. And I feel confident about that because I did start and end time.
Mhm.
So we did, if you may want to ask that question differently, unless you love the buckets and. you
well,
wanna
no, we
see why.
have, so this bucket was for meetings. So if you have the data already, and we're confident on the data, which I'm sure we are, the preparation time is the one that you can't quantify just yet.
Right.
And these buckets would be great because,
Sure.
as we know, there's different councilmen that are assigned to different committees and and not all of them show up to all the meetings that you were saying. If you are
Yeah.
into the job, you go to the Chamber of Commerce, this or that, whatever. The idea here is to capture, because once you see, if you ask an open-ended question, there's people that are going to really put thought into answering the question. There's some people that are gonna go, I go to this and that meeting 4 hours,
One word,
right?
Yeah.
If you show them granular, they're gonna think about each one individually, and you're gonna get more accurate data that way. The other thing that I'm proposing, and again, I'm fine with leaving it by the month, is doing it on a week instead of a month. It gives you more granular data, and then we can quantify it better by the buckets. If we go with the meeting time that we have, great. The preparation time may be different, because, I mean, just for this stuff, and then the meeting yesterday, and I was just gonna go there to listen in. I spent like at least a couple hours just searching through data. Can't imagine how much the councilmen and women do, right?
I think-
Council members.
And John might be able to add some light to this. I think a monthly estimate will be easier, just because
Yeah.
we know that this regional meeting meets monthly, or they meet twice a month. And if they meet twice a month, it's not the same week of another week.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned average, but again, we can go with monthly. It's fine. But the idea here is that whatever we can bucket, and I believe I made the same comment to question, what was it? A question below that, which was the travel time. Like we can, like, if we know the reasons why they would travel out, then we can break it down this way, because again, it just gives them, it gives them a better chance to think through each of those, as opposed to an open-ended question. Because surveys, when you give free-form text, give you less meaningful data than if you target the question specifically, right?
One, not suggesting that this replaces anything.
Mhm.
You could, if you wanted to, say, we estimate council time to be X, council president time to be Y, and deputy council, do you agree or disagree? Or do you think it's more or less, or what do you think the number is?
Right, but then again, let's say that we ask that question, and the answer is, I disagree. I think it's more. I think it's X, right? Well, I guess we could use that too.
It really, this again goes back to, how involved they or committed they are.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
City is such a broad topic, and as you've seen just from the budget, the amount of services provided,
Mhm.
to get underneath all that stuff is a lot of reading. And when there's decisions about it, especially the budget with others that come up. And, you can play it either way. You can decide, I'm gonna trust the staff that comes in, what they present, and I'll make a decision based on what I hear, and I'm not gonna do much homework.
Right,
Or you're gonna do a lot of homework and become really informed. We've seen both.
Yeah.
Right, so they're gonna probably give different answers on how much time they spend, if they're being honest.
no, exactly, and then my idea is, okay, as everything with a survey, you grab all the data and then you average it out and say, okay, so the average out for the 7 council member we have is this, right? And then decide from there.
So my only question, Nick, about your suggestion, can you scroll down, John? So see it at the top of it, please.
Yeah.
Whether giving them buckets of up to 1 hour, up to 3 hours, or 3 to 5 hours, whatever, gives you the precise data that you're looking for.
Yes.
Whether you just put a blank, city council blank, mobility infrastructure committee blank.
And let them put a number in.
Yeah,
We could also do that.
because otherwise you don't know whether it's 2, 2, 3, or 4, 5,
No, yeah, the idea is like and that's why it's worded up to.
Right.
Because if they say up to 3, it's 3, right? That's the way I view it. If you're saying up to 3, you're gonna say like, oh, yeah, because again, you're averaging it out in now a month, right? So, a month I spend up to 3 hours on that, okay, so.
But you're not gonna know that for 5 hours or more, for that last one.
Then 5 hours or more, you consider it, like we can say a number, but I mean, are we gonna say 5 or more? Oh, it's 20. No, we can say, okay, it's gonna be like, they spend 10 hours on this thing. But, and again, I'm not married to any of that. I thought like,
Yeah.
what I want is, I think that if we go for more granular data and allow them to think through the different aspects of what meetings they're preparing to or preparing for, will give us more data.
Yeah,
for
I
us
like
to
it.
discuss,
I
Right?
like that. I'm just suggesting.
Yeah,
I like
Oh,
it.
yeah, no, that's a good idea. Maybe just put a number in there, none or how much.
There's something about the checkbox there, psychologically, it goes faster.
Yeah.
You will get a different answer if you did both. You'd be surprised how that is. I like the idea of the checkbox.
But if someone really
Let's
is
just put
spending
numbers.
20 hours a month on the city council prep time, we're not gonna know that from this.
Yeah.
No, right, I mean, and we could say, like, we could expand this. I mean, I added 5 columns because I was just like putting
You could
something
do a
together real fast.
conditional Field where it said, if you check this box, you need to tell me how many hours that is.
So
That's exactly, there you go,
other
right?
comments below.
And some of these are
So
pretty
you can
steady,
tell us they didn't.
like
Yeah.
per month, And some of them are very seasonal. Like council, the actual council meetings is quite seasonal. When you get into that budget, those are always gonna be longer meetings, when you get down into the late part of the budget cycle.
Now they're in CIP, so they're
Right.
in another.
And so there's a
cycle.
little wave this time of year to do the capital, which is delivered by summer. And then the budget is done by fall. Now they're going to biennial, hopefully reduce some of that. I mean, they, over the last 4, 5, 6, maybe more years, they've been really making efforts to try to streamline their workload, because it was completely out of control 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, they were doing midnight meetings, 7 to
Oh, God.
midnight,
Oh, wow.
like every week, and plus the committees and everything else. It was, remember that, it was just nuts. I was like,
Why?
I'm just gonna hide here. Oh, well, some of it was internal political strife, but some of it was just, they
Oh.
were disorganized about how to approach. And I think there was a certain level of mistrust with the administration at the time. So they were trying to grill and to play gotcha on everything, single thing, and it was just kind of on and on and on. And there was a few council members that were gluttons for punishment, they didn't care, they just would be there all night, another council member was like, get me out of here.
Oh.
So it
And
went
there's
through that
nothing you can do,
cycle.
you're held prisoner by this person or
Well, I
couple
mean,
people?
that's when you get into
That's yeah.
conduct and rules and your relationship building.
Yeah, so as part of it, they did change some, council rules, as part of the whole
Oh.
kind of rebuild
Yeah,
to get it under control. And,
I bet.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like somebody that doesn't turn their audio off on a Zoom. Now that person has held the whole place prisoner because we can't talk around this dumb guy.
And there was,
His phone on mute, or he put his phone on hold and now we're listening to his hold music. It's like, you killed the whole call.
But there were some legitimate beasts in that, over the years, way back when I was there were some staff that were inconsistent in what they delivered. So it was just constantly changing how the message was delivered, say, for development services.
Oh,
Or whatever metrics you're talking about, the topic was wildly inconsistent.
you
And
mean
so-
like Tina's position?
No, but these would be like, at a
Not Tina.
committee meeting, you've got somebody from development services reporting on stuff
Yeah.
that's going on, or you've got public works. It was extremely hard to figure out what's going on to make a good decision. And it led to a lot of frustration, and that's where it kind of blew up like 5 or 6 years ago.
Wow.
But then finally, the administration came around to being, well, people like Susie got hired, that should come together and deliver a quality product that's understandable, digestible. So it's been a big improvement over the last.
Wow.
But it's just, it was part of the growing thing. You're a really small city
Mm.
and, you could,
Were there 7 council people at
so,
that time?
you've been in the council chambers, right? The city was so small, the entire staff could fit in that room, like
Oh,
all departments.
Oh, wow.
And that was, what,
midnight.
in the 90s. Yeah, it was
I'd
out
have
of
to
control.
It wasn't as bad as some other places I worked when how long the meetings went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Sammamish just went through that cycle, and they had a lot of internal strife, they had
Oh, wow.
problems with staffing, and it was just, But sometimes, I guess it ebbs and flows, but I know we're in his end.
Meeting prep,
Okay, sorry.
So,
and
Got off
post-work,
topic.
I guess.
Mhm,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And both work, yeah.
so I like Tina's idea of
mhm.
1, 3, 5, if more
then
than
a
5,
conditional.
state a number.
Here's a number. Yeah, that's a great.
And that would be both for the prep and the doc supplementary too. I think.
If the form isn't too I can do conditional fields. If this survey isn't too complicated, I can build it in our website survey maker. But if it needs to be made in Survey Monkey or something else that's outside of my expertise, and I'd look to one of our members to take on.
Oh, I
that
can,
responsibility.
yeah. I've done it
Yeah, this is-
many times, but no, we'll try to keep it within the tooling we have. I think even like Google Sheets has that functionality where you can turn a Google Sheet into a a survey or
I mean, we
whatever.
have a tool.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
I can be of service, great. If
Oh, great.
you guys have plans for something more elaborate, then I would look for a commissioner
Yeah.
to own it.
No, definitely. If for some reason you can do it, I'll do it. Sign me up.
Well, I
Okay,
would definitely want, a key person to, flow through the forum and make sure it's functioning how it should, so.
I thought about that and I thought like, why don't we, the whole commission just goes in there, fills it out once and then we can test it and then have notes like, oh, it was very difficult to do this, or I went through this stuff and like, we can test it, like test run it ourselves, right? And maybe we can pester some of the staff. Have like, you know, Susie
Yeah.
fill it out.
yeah, you always gotta test it once. please.
Yeah,
See
definitely.
if it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
See,
Um,
okay, you gotta test multiple browsers, because some of these apps
Right.
behave differently.
Exactly. The other place where I did this sort of breakdown is in the expense category. Because again, when you ask somebody an open question about, hey, what do you expense? I don't know, like this or that. But if you have, and that's why I asked, and I went through the policy and everything to figure out what, because there was a question there in the last survey that says, what things do you, what expenses you incur that are non-refundable? So I went through the policy, I read up and down, and there's nothing there that's listed that is non-refundable within, reason and,
Yeah.
ethically, I'm not like, nobody's gonna go and expend something, but also not gonna use something that's not
Oh,
like,
new car.
exactly.
So I think
But,
this will tell,
Mhm.
some valuable information, which is really, do they have expenses outside of reimbursement? Because we're gonna know whether they sought reimbursement or not.
of course,
So this
but
is-
the idea is like, what are you spending that is reimbursable that you're not expensing because you just don't care, right? And then, and if you, again, break it down this way with, and I just literally grabbed, like, every item in there is one of the phone, comma, whatever there was in the actual question before. I just broke it down this way, because it's easier for them to say, oh, yeah, I mean, I spend like less than $250 a month on, I don't know, copying and printing or this, blah, blah, blah. And then, again, we get more, actionable data, I guess.
Although here's my concern about that.
Mhm.
I think it would be good data, but if the council members are not submitting it for reimbursement because they just don't want to spend the time or the effort, they're not gonna spend the time or the effort on.
Well, so there's an issue, so the city, maybe this is changing a lot. Doing expense reimbursements is not, it's kludgy.
Is that what?
It's kludgy, it's not easy.
Kludgy?
But
I've never heard that word.
Oh, yeah.
We would help, we would fill out the form on their behalf, so it's a little bit different process. I can tell you, they don't have credit cards, but we do have, we do have P cards now,
They do.
which believe it or not, it was something we didn't
I was
have
doing it
even.
the whole time I was there.
Even a year ago in one of our departments. Anyway, so we do a lot more registration on their behalf, a lot more just direct billing to the city than we would have ever done.
Yeah, the
to-
finance just hasn't quite got a reimbursement module yet.
Right. I mean, and I understand your point, 100%. I think we have to drive the desire for us to get accurate data and like ask them, please be as, truthful as you can and spend the time in the survey because we're working for you, please, right? And I think like we'll get more this way than just an open-ended question is my thought, right?
You're right, I think we would. I'm just not sure the dollars justify it. I mean, we're only budgeting a few $1,000s for this stuff.
Well, I mean, we're budgeting $2,000. Is that the top that they can expense, or is that what we're expecting them to expense? Because there's probably more than that they just don't talk about. This is a year.
Right,
Like,
This is.
I spend that much on my son's paper for his drawing.
Oh, I know,
Right.
yeah, that's.
So if they are printing stuff to like read for like all the meetings they're going to or whatever, sure, they may be spending,
A lot of this isn't I mean, if you're talking about travel, training, registration, yes, but the other categories are really expenses we're making that we're charging against the department for like their
Yeah.
it's business cards or their, you know, what have it. You know, I imagine people are printing their own things. They used to either send it to the city hall printer and then pick them up or ask staff to print it for them. Technology's improved. They've got, you know, more mobile devices and that has gone down.
So here's an
Yeah, I
expense,
would imagine it would be a low.
here's an expense that occurred to me that I used to get all kinds of trouble from my wife for. So there are groups like, not to sound green line or
It's dinner.
their dinners, their charity fundraisers. As a council member, you're pretty much expected to get involved and give a donation, buy the dinner. You don't get compensated for any of that. And it can be $150 before you even write an extra bonus. It's just
that's
to
one
speak at the
event.
dinner.
Right.
And, you know, it's not officially in the title, but this is again goes to, are you committed?
Yeah, are you networking?
Are you networking and you're getting to know
talking
other
with
council
others?
members in other cities, all that kind of
that
stuff.
deserves its own
That's,
line. Then in here, so like the meals one, we can break it down and like, events. Are you spending on events, like in a,
regional event.
With other
in the past, and see, this is in the past year. So they're gonna go, oh yeah, in events, I spent,
Would other city
$500.
council members be in the same bind of
Sure, yep.
being in, you know, looking at you to cover the bill? It seems like the public would know that. Of course, I didn't know that when we first started, how little they're paying.
And I think the lead into this section, or at least that, the breakdown. I think we'll quickly know that people are not seeking reimbursement, so we could probably change the lead in that just says, we recognize, you know,
yeah.
we've
Yeah.
looked at the data and it says 0, but tell us more
Are you-
about what you're personally impacted by this position.
Are you spending,
So
yeah,
this is an interesting thing because it does have something to do with equity.
Right,
So there's this implicit assumption that you've got enough money because you're a council member to buy $150 seat at a fundraiser.
sure,
And so, but if you don't,
right,
then you're gonna be less effective because you're not networked as much.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
we even have a thing in this, that you said in the city, that if you can't afford your 10% charge to run for council, that there's somebody that'll help pay for that. So we've got people that don't have all that extra cash, maybe, you know, one salary and 8 kids or something.
it's a filing fee
So
bill.
those people aren't gonna be paying
Right, but I mean-
$150, that's out of their personal budget. That's crazy, that sounds like old school.
yeah. So for example, I mean, one of the first things we were talking about in our very first meeting here, where Mayor Polly was sitting there, we were talking about like broadening the net of who we want to run, right? We want it, I want I don't know, a single mom that works a retail job to be in the city council, because that's a perspective we want to hear about, right?
But they
Is
don't
that person gonna be able to pay the entry fee?
have- And they're not gonna have the time for that.
Probably not. They might if they're incentivized enough and covered enough, because this person makes what? I don't know, $35,000 a year? If they are going to double that amount of, huh?
I barely have enough time to come in and I just have my husband. I got a 1,500-foot condo and a husband and
I understand, but again,
I don't think a single mom with, you know, how many kids has time to be a council member.
I don't wanna make that assumption.
Yeah.
I don't wanna make that assumption either. I wanna give the options to whoever
Well,
feels they
have to.
can and want.
If they
to
want to
do it.
run, they can get, you know, get the help from the city to run or whatever that is and. Well,
We're gonna know that, but I agree with everything you said, Mike. I don't know the answer to this, and Tina, you may know. I don't
Yeah,
know
it's
that we
not
can
right
put
to
the
say.
city in the position of looking like it's reimbursing donations to.
Yeah, no, it's.
I understand. No, and
Yeah.
that's,
Oh,
That's a
they
political-
raise money just
It's the public funds, it's the
right.
ethical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, we want to make sure we don't create a record that makes
And
it
some
look
of
like
these
that.
organizations.
No, of course.
The city actually funds a portion of the
Oh.
revenues for these nonprofits if they're social service agencies.
Right.
Like, we outsource some things like the food bank, or whatever, right? There's a bunch of those that the city funds. But they also do their own fundraisers, and as a council member.
Oh, yeah, so there's all sorts of conflict.
And so it's kind of, yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, it'd be great if we had that kind of diversity in the council, but a lot of things would have to change more than how much money we pay in the salary.
I mean, at least now they're getting.
I just don't,
To make up for what they were spending. When I was there, I
Yeah.
was breaking even on the year.
I mean,
Wow.
my only thing is like, I don't want,
Mhm.
I mean, we are in a, in a position where we can make that a non, deterrent, right?
How
For-
would we do that?
By, if a single mother that works full-time
Uh-huh.
can go half-time to spend the rest of the time in here because we're covering the rest of the expenses with the salary that we're proposing,
Oh.
that's a win for me,
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Again, you're right. I'm not saying let's have all council members go to every single dinner and give out a bunch of money and we're gonna cover it with the salary. Of course, that's not what I'm saying, but,
yeah,
also, we have to be realistic with the insight that we're getting from John, which is, I mean, there are unwritten, like, guidelines of when you are a council member that you're gonna go like, and walk around all of, like, I don't know, salmon days and like buy a bunch of like, local paintings, which I have a bunch, and there's an artist that lives around it, that's amazing. But anyways,
We're not reimbursing you.
exactly. But you get my point, right?
Yeah, and it can be hard, I think, to separate out that activity, those donations and purchasing it from what's city council business and what's political campaign business. Because there will be people who are doing that, who are thinking of
Right.
running and want to gain the favor of the people by.
Yeah,
Also.
I don't know if I even wanna
And
think
have
of that
about-
side when
Yeah.
considering this.
Yeah, we have to think about how to deal with that.
It is tangentially related, so the nonprofits, for example, I was on Greenway, they like to have public officials come to their fundraisers, because, they want to be everybody in the same boat. When we did this big project, used to be called Park Point, it's behind the high school. And so there's a piece of land of 75 acres between the high school and the DNR property, which is over Tiger Mountain.
oh,
And this,
really?
yeah.
Oh,
and they
there's
were
all
gonna-
trails in there, right?
Now, so if they were gonna build the bypass, there's a developer who bought that property. And he's gonna put in like, I don't know, 300 and some odd units in there, crammed into that hill.
Oh,
And everybody's like, oh my God, there's nothing we can do about it. We're just like, whatever.
it's like what Bellevue did to Coal Creek.
And so then what happened though is the recession. And he went bankrupt. And his creditors that got caught holding the bag, they went under. And then the creditors for them went under. And finally, some obscure bank in Canada got stuck with the bag. And they called us up like, we'd like a deal. And so we worked a deal with the Greenway, came up with some money, Port Blakely, which did the Highlands. And they wanted to expand like 5 acres. So they were willing to come up with the money. We got the price, it was 25 million initially.
Yeah.
We got it for 1.2.
Oh, wow.
And we gave them 5 acres. There was already a big development up there, and there was nothing on this foot of the mountains, so we didn't want to add anything to it. But that was a nonprofit, cities involved,
Dodged a bullet.
So I have to thank the recession for the view from my house. Cause I literally I just view that mountain
Yeah.
and people flying.
Yeah,
above.
right.
Which is great. All right.
I don't think the city of Dunwoody is gonna get that lucky though. Or city of, what was it, Newcastle? They sold Coal Creek property. Developers gonna take over.
Once the developers ask to do something and they own the property, it's too late.
Yeah.
You have to be way upstream of that with, ownership.
Yeah,
or
so they're gonna tear
zoning or
down
whatever.
historical things in there and all that stuff.
Yeah.
What a disaster.
Yeah,
Anyways.
So, I think that's all we have for edits on the questions.
Yeah, I just had sprinkled comments everywhere, but like, there was one at the very beginning where we asked them, like, the third question, if I'm not mistaken, is how much time have you been, Issaquah city council member? We know that information, why are we asking, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could ask it, how long have you been in government? How long have you held an elected position, not just in the city of Issaquah, but other places? That might skew their answers to the salary thing. Maybe they were city council in LA County or something. They probably got paid a lot more money than the city of Issaquah.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
With that, just thinking it could skew their answers compared to somebody who was in it for 2 years and out.
But you are right. I did the table, I did the research. We know
Yeah.
how long they've been here and Russell Joe returning to the
Yeah.
council seat, so his term length of service. So we sort of know their seniority if you're talking about. Could be a good question to exclude since we already know it. Let's, especially if we've added a few, so.
right, no, yeah, 'cause I mean,
Easier.
we do want more, like more actionable and good data. We also don't want to overwhelm them with a bunch of like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, but in your train of thought there, if we are gonna ask them for tenure outside of Issaquah, if they've been in government before. The thing is, in that same example, let's say they've been in LA and they made much money. Well, LA is a massive city. Do we want to compare apples to oranges in that way? with that
Compare,
data?
it would just. I don't know, I think I was just feeding off your original thought because it would skew maybe, they're gonna think the salary is ridiculous compared to their history in California.
Okay, if they're realistic, we are a tiny city compared to
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I
it is,
just-
right?
I think I can confidently say
Yeah.
the majority of our current council has served on a council board or commission prior.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that they would have held a elected seat.
Before the city
Elsewhere.
council?
Did Barb, no, Barb was the school district, but was, She might have been on the board for a minute.
She was on the board and I think Tola was too.
Okay.
It's called school.
I think Tola.
so there,
Yeah.
there's
It
a,
really.
there's a
really doesn't
local,
matter. Yeah.
component, if that's important. Not sure what it would tell us.
I don't think it goes anywhere.
No.
No.
It wouldn't skew it.
What I wanna know is how did you do this? Because I have that on my thing and you gave us the word, but how is it showing up here on his computer? Is it on,
So when you,
Right, you go to.
He sent it to.
you sent it to him, so you downloaded
no, I
it,
sent it, yes. So I downloaded the file and then you go to review
yeah.
and then you check track changes
Yeah,
there.
I get that part, I was just,
Show comment.
I just saved the file and
I-
emailed it to people.
uploaded it to the website, it's like,
No,
I couldn't
You
figure
could.
that out.
Although
But
we
I
can
asked
all work on
not
it.
to, so. people-
Right, yes. I just emailed it because if I put it somewhere and then I get slapped.
Okay,
It's
I
like downgrade on a copy sitting up there because that defeats the rules about meetings.
Yeah,
Correct.
information sharing is one thing, but when you start saying, I think this is a better question, or I feel strongly
Yeah.
that this is the
Right.
way that
That's
this
one of
should
the
be
time.
built, then
Unfortunately.
yeah.
I debated myself between sending it just to you or to both of you. I said, nah, I'm gonna go save. Send it
she
just,
said everything.
we'll
you
figure it
heard.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's fine.
I shared it.
Yeah.
Passed
Yeah.
the test.
I mean, you can send it to the chair and the
So
staff, and that's.
we're gonna
fine.
come back
It's
to
not
this
anybody
again next
else.
week, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about how you want to spend next week. So,
Mhm.
let's look ahead.
Drinking margarita.
Second looks good still. Potentially I could check with HR, still maybe too soon on data. But we could just focus on getting the salary, form done. I can check with Lauren and see if she has anything new to present, even if it's just like, this is where we're at and this is the missing pieces, could be a good one.
Yeah, well, if that's all it is, maybe you can just relay it from her. She doesn't need to come.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I know that she's not available the following week, so, we would leverage a more significant time with her that week after.
Okay.
Okay.
So did you do that too?
Yeah.
Download and add comments? Are your comments in there? Can you merge it?
Sort of merge.
I had more than one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, they were.
so I couldn't figure it out, so I had to write mine down, and so now that I know how to do it, I will do it and.
Do you have comments we should consider now?
Yes.
Well, no, because I wrote them down and they're sitting at my desk.
Oh,
Because I couldn't figure out how to do this part, and then I'm like, well, where the hell am I gonna upload this? And then so I thought, maybe they're doing it on the web. So, I don't know, I
Maybe
spiraled.
we should do is send it to Tina and
Yeah,
John,
send it to
Yeah.
me.
because
I'll
one
send
of
it to-
them's gonna be producing a new
Yeah.
version. of
Yeah.
this, Right?
So we could review.
I
it.
think that maybe next week,
Yeah.
we can
Questions.
just start working on the final questionnaire too,
Yeah.
Okay,
right?
Because once we get the questionnaire submitted and then they respond to it, then we make our debate, discussion for what we're gonna do with the salaries, and then we,
Well, we need to.
Well, we'll have to look at the data, we'll have to discuss the data, we'll
Yeah.
have to figure out what that's telling us.
okay,
Ask for more data, review the HR data, all the data that we're getting from Laura and everybody. And then, again, yeah, it's gonna be an organic conversation, right?
Yeah.
But, I think that hopefully, if we can, by the end of the next session, I think we should have the survey like completed, like
Yeah.
this is the survey we wanna send out, and then, Tina, you and I can work, offline and see, like, can it be done with the survey stuff that you have, or you want me to take over and create the survey? Then, once we have of that ready,
Mhm.
before the meeting afterward, if we're ready, we can send it to us, like, hey, let's do a test run, and then bring notes to the next day. That day, we make the final preparations, and then we said, okay, this is going out tomorrow, Wednesday,
So this
whatever.
15th would be.
We're gonna ask them to have it ready by next Monday, and we review the answers on Tuesday.
So the 23rd would
Yeah.
be reviewing answers. That's the Tuesday before the 3-day weekend.
Right.
Well, I don't know, how much time were they given last time? Do you remember, Tina? In
How much
2015, were the council given to respond?
like a long weekend?
Oh,
Yeah, really, no, I mean, it's,
Think of this stuff, right?
worst case scenario, we're gonna be looking at about 25 questions, 26.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think they have.
an hour should be enough for them to fill it out. We're not asking them to do any
Josh, were
research.
you
or
there
anything.
when the survey went out?
It happened-
2015.
Yeah, I was around in 2011.
Oh,
I do remember it happening. I thought it was a good idea. That was the beginning of we're gonna fix this mess.
was the response amongst the council members? Did they see value in the survey or?
Yeah, they were tuned into it,
Okay,
for sure.
They were responsive and gave us the information that it was helpful.
yeah, and then in response, they saw salaries go up. Maybe not actually hit them because it was the next year's.
No, it was immediate.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
was July
it
1
was.
was the effective date
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
year.
That's right. What was
Okay.
the one that they voted on it and it was gonna take effect the following year? Some of them won't even be there anymore
That was probably 2008
when they voted for it.
when they, yeah.
Okay,
That was here for that.
The secondary.
you tell me these stories and then they're all jumbled up now.
Okay, so remote access for you next week,
Yes, please.
okay?
Mhm.
And
This week is the second.
that's the second.
I'm here,
The 9th looks good
yes,
still, but again, no compensation conversations
Just yet, no.
because Lauren's gone. And then we still look good for the 16th of May.
Mhm.
I'll check with Lauren and see if she can hit us hard with some compensation data.
Great.
You'll send me a link or something for next week.
It should already be in the
Should be.
master.
Oh, is it? Okay.
We repurposed the info.
Okay.
So if you don't see it on today's calendar,
I'll,
it's the same.
I'll find it.
If you need it again, let me know.
Yeah, it should be recurring meeting, so it should have populated every week for you.
Yeah.
Automatically.
Okay.
So the,
You guys check.
the more that we can get, start the compensation data on the 16th and 23rd, then we might want to take a week off.
Yeah, like the 30th, because it's the first day back after a 3-day weekend.
There's a,
Yeah. Yeah, we already said no go on that one.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So no meeting.
there's
on
a
the
holiday
30th.
somewhere in there.
Yeah, Memorial Day is May.
The 29th, yes. So maybe that's the week we take off, because,
Yeah, I think that we already
Yeah, I
did
already
it.
have it canceled.
there you go.
I'll make it red for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the 30th?
Yeah, that's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
No meeting then.
It'll show on my calendar, okay.
And John, you can't on the 6th
Yeah,
of
I've
June?
got 2 weeks, basically, one, Thursday to Thursday, 25th of May to the 8th of June.
And you're not remotely.
I would be, possibly, I don't even know if there's
We're making that
decent Wi-Fi
not happen.
there.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah, there's that, right.
Okay.
But we've got flexibility. We can decide what we want
Yeah.
to do with that, and depending on how much, what your comfort level is and what missing data.
That's 4 meetings in the month of May. We should be able to have our survey out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, I was thinking.
I mean, well, hopefully,
compensation.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. This is-
Moving forward.
Moving
Yeah.
forward,
Survey.
yes.
That's gonna require a lot of data.
right, no, yeah, no, the survey will probably, hopefully have it out by next, meeting.
Yeah.
Like right after next meeting, we should have it ready and out.
Take the notes and turn the revised one and then,
Okay.
yeah. So who wants to do the actual survey?
Well, I think I said, if it fits nicely into our website platform, I can try to enter it in a way that will tell me if there's a roadblock or not. And
Right.
then I can meet with you and
Yeah, I
we can
can,
fine tune it, and I can share the link directly with you, and we
right,
can even Teams, stuff at City Hall, wherever you like.
yeah. Sounds good. Yeah, because do we want to set that up before next meeting, or we want to wait for Joe to, come back and take a look at it and give his input?
I think I can start building a shell, because it's easy enough to,
Right.
remove
So
or
who's writing
edit.
all the stuff we talked about today that is in your notes, and basically building the shell on a Word document like we had before, like this is what.
A clean version of that.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm just trying to merge those here and take notes at the same time, so I got a little lost.
Mhm.
But I think I got them
Yeah.
merged.
So
So I'll
you'll
send you the merged document.
merge off.
I'll
And maybe
put mine
share,
over just as soon as I
share,
can put it in.
yeah,
okay.
and then I can see how easy it
You
is.
guys have to wait one year.
I'm pretty good with form building, so I'll give it a go.
Great. And then we'll do a final review of that next week, make any tweaks that we need, and then vote on sending it out that Wednesday. So that's,
Well, the testing, don't forget the testing piece of that.
Yeah, we test it out at the meeting maybe, or even, give ourselves a couple days to.
Yeah.
Sure.
However that works out, we do want to do the test.
right, so, good point. So if we vote on it on Tuesday to lock it down, then on Wednesday, we can test it by the end of the Wednesday.
Yeah.
If we feel like, oh, yeah, no, we tried it, we can let Tina know if anybody has an objection on sending it out on that Thursday, we send it Thursday morning to the council and tell them, hey, please deliver this by end of day Monday. So we compile the answers on that Tuesday and we meet on the 9th. Right? And then that's when we review the survey answers,
All goes well.
if all
Yeah.
goes well.
Okay.
There we go.
Sounds good.
We're gonna go.
So, hey, Joe, I'll get that right. Geo,
Joe,
Joe, but he's on the 9th, right?
he's back
On the
on the
second.
2nd, actually, next week. So when we're reviewing it here, he'll be able to see it.
Yeah, and he'll watch the, video, and he might have some financial questions too.
Yeah.
that I can connect him directly to. Susan.
To the question, when does the recording go live usually? Because
Oh, God, I forgot.
like the last one, I didn't see it. Maybe I'm not looking the right
I can
place.
show you where, it's housed. That's a good question. So,
Because I thought it was like a YouTube channel.
yeah, I'll show you two places.
Okay.
She's done.
I love it when people show me or send me links. That's the best for me ever. Do it out.
I'll take over.
Okay. So, log of YouTube. And on our YouTube channel, you would be under, is that the way? Scroll down, city council.
I love Issaquah, but
So boards and commissions. And they're just date driven, so we should be,
oh, there it is, April 18th,
Boards and commissions.
the second one from top.
Yeah.
And that went live 4 days ago, so Saturday.
Salary.
8
Right.
views. And then the other way that you can see it, because as soon as he posts it here, he goes over to your salary commission page. It's really a different site, but right here on the 18th, you'll see two links. You'll see your agenda and then your
Oh,
video.
video, there it
And
is.
video will pop up just that video directly and start auto playing for you.
Got it.
And then the minutes will be posted. There'll be another button for minutes and the minutes go in your field. So it's a good handy dandy little, window to be in, if you like that view.
So, right, because we just approved the minutes, so the minutes go live.
Yeah.
for
And
that.
then I'll show you, for those that like a bigger screen, bigger computer, split screen is really nice too, because you can see the agenda on the left and you can view the document on the right.
Nice.
So when there's attachments, it can be really handy. Otherwise, sometimes you feel like you might miss some key components. Because those were some things that we had in the packet.
That's handy.
There is your
Great,
navigation.
thank you.
Oh, let me go one other spot. Gov, salary, files.
Thank you for fixing, that was annoying, the leaving bejesus out of me.
I think I was because
I would get a pop-up telling me like, you're not something or other in this organization or whatever, like, it was annoying.
What I've been doing is that, like, if Susie handed, she handed this document out tonight, I'm gonna put it in as a handout to this meeting folder.
For
I know-
next week's, right?
For this meeting, unless it belongs on the agenda, but for example. Here, what was the 18th? The 18th, we had some documents that sort of became working documents. And I wonder if there's value in pulling those out into a top folder for you or some better repository, like working files. But I wanted to at least show you
Get the
this.
subtext.
So our expectation should be, if we've discussed or seen or being shared a file in a meeting, it should be in the folder for that meeting.
Yeah, that's where I've been.
Excellent. That's fine, it works for me.
And then you asked for the chart increase, so that was added. I just want you to know that
Yeah.
when I send you a tidbit of information, I'm also including it over
Yeah.
here. And I may not be doing a good job of telling you exactly where it is, but if I need to organize it differently, I'm happy to.
No, I think that, I don't know for you guys, but it works for me by the meeting. Oh, I remember that on that date, we talked
Yeah,
about this thing, we go to that folder, there it is,
Tina was
this file.
involved, it'll be on
It
If
works
you come
great.
across materials you want to share with the group at that meeting, you can always drop in that folder and then.
Yeah, you're supposed to send it to Tina first.
Or tell me, I dropped it in there, I wanna.
Yeah.
Talk about it under
I'd
the
like to
business
add
or add it to the
this
agenda.
thing I came across,
For future meetings?
for an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, I mean, if you're telling me I've dropped something in here for the group to talk at the meeting, then I'll put it on. the
Oh, but
agenda.
it has to be like a piece of information,
Yes,
not
that's
a
right.
piece of,
Like that article that.
Joe was sent, right?
I moved it over to the folder and I wasn't concerned that you
Or
were.
it could be a piece of work that we've already all agreed on, like we already, or just around here said, here's the edits we like, but it hasn't been made into a clean document. Drop that in there, it's not a big deal.
Right.
But not the one where you're arguing for $1 million a year.
Yes, that's not.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but like, opinion pieces
Yeah,
Right.
from ourselves, we can't drop there, just like, hey, I wanna discuss my opinion on this thing. Next meeting, I'm dropping this file.
Just send that to Tina.
Right, I'll send that to Dean.
All right.
Okay.
And thank you for your prompt replies. It's amazing. I email you and like what seems seconds later, I get a response.
Wow.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
When you have a lot coming over the transom, you take care of it when you see it, or remember it's.
Mhm.
Do this the way
It's
I
true.
operate.
That's right. All right, 7:51, are we good?
Yeah,
Any other
we
day?
adjourned 7:51. Everybody
Excellent.
agree? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
Second. As always, a pleasure.
Yes.